watching Telesur. This is from the south, from Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Let's begin. We start with Brazil. Former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is being questioned in court today for a second alleged corruption case. Lula's supporters gather outside the prison in Curitiba, where he is serving a 12-year sentence for alleged corruption. They say this new case, known as the Atibaia case, is just another attempt to use the courts to keep the former president out of politics. Trade unions, the landless workers' movement, and the Workers' Party lawmakers are all accompanying Lula to the court. The leader of the Workers' Party in the Brazilian lower house, Paulo Pimenta, denounces that the country continues to suffer a coup. Let's listen to him.
Today we're living one more episode of the coup. Lula is innocent and is here persecuted for all he represents. This process is a scandal. This investigation about a farm in Atibaia could never be made in Curitiba. There is no link with the Petrobras, so Sergio Moro could never have been the judge.
The case of Lula continues to make waves. Former presidential candidate Fernando Haddad visited Lula just before he was taken to court. He was joined by Workers' Party President Gleisi Hoffmann. They both said that they condemned the latest attempt at persecuting Lula.
I was with President Lula. He remains calm. He is sure that if his arguments are heard, justice will be respected. And he will be absolved. He's ready for today and is grateful for all the solidarity the people have shown.
Lula is once again being questioned, with no evidence to speak of. What was Lula's crime? They have no proof to support the charges. Lula is not aware of any of the things he's now being accused of.
We'll continue updating you with more stuff on Lula. Still in the country, after his insults from the president-elect, Cuba has announced it is dropping a program that supplied doctors to poor communities. Our correspondent in Brasilia, Danai Galetti, explains how it all began.
The Cuban Health Ministry has announced the departure of the Cuban doctors who were here in Brazil as part of the program Más Médicos, or More Doctors, created in 2013 as an initiative of the Brazilian president, Dilma Rousseff. The program sent Cuban and foreign doctors to remote and vulnerable parts of the country, including the favelas in Rio and Brasilia. It meant the first time that more than 700 municipalities had ever enjoyed the presence of a doctor. 20,000 doctors and health professionals took part in the program over the last 5 years, and they treated around 130 million people. In 2016, after the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, Cuba said it would continue with the program in conjunction with the Pan American Health Organization, if the agreements with the local authorities were respected. But now, with the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro, has announced that he will change the agreement by only hiring doctors individually and forcing them to validate their qualifications if they want to continue working in the program. This is why the Cuban Health Ministry took the decision to end the program.
Let's move along. The main body of the first Caravan of Central American migrants is still moving through the border state of Sonora. They're getting closer every day to the U.S. border. Many are boarding buses to cover the distance they still have left before reaching their goal. There are about 3,500 people in this group. It has been over a month since they set off from their home countries, and they all reject the claims made by U.S. President Donald Trump, who has said that the caravans are full of gang members. If anything, migrants say it's gangs that caused them to flee in the first place. Let's listen to our correspondent Pablo Perez for an update on the migrants' caravan.
We are right now at the La Concha phytosanitary station. This is the place where the migrant caravan arrived yesterday, most of them, because there are still over 800 that are on their way from the state of Nayarit. And here, the people of Sinaloa have received them, fed them, and treated them medically. But there's a problem that Sinaloa also has been struck by Hurricane Willa, so they're heavily damaged, and they have their own casualties. So they say they cannot take care either of the migrant caravan, but they are collaborating with buses that are leaving this place, and they are taking them all the way to the next state, Sonora, and that's a long ride. It's 690 kilometers. That will be a record distance for the migrant caravan in only one day, but they're not doing it all together, but in small quantities. So far, they tell us that 1,200 have left this point since yesterday, and they are continuously leaving this place in 40 people groups, all the way to Navojoa, Sonora, which will be their next stop.
So now let's look at the caravan, the migrant caravan. And we have a graphic that we can show you on where they are on the map. 800 of them are in Tijuana at the border. Let's look at them. There we are. We have the map of Mexico and where they are. 3,400 are expected to arrive soon. 2,000 have stayed in Mexico City, and 1,500 are between Oaxaca and Veracruz. 2,700 have stayed in Mexico. And as the caravan is getting closer to the border, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis is visiting the area, and he spoke about the actions that the military will take. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Jorge Gestoso, explains.
Thank you very much. Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, is traveling today to McAllen, Texas, to meet with troops deployed to the border with Mexico. We're talking about 7,000 troops that has been ordered to be deployed, 2,800 in Texas, the other ones in neighboring California and Arizona. President Trump was ordering the deployment previous the midterm elections, saying that was a threat to the national security, the proximity, quote-unquote proximity of a caravan coming from Central America with migrants. He was saying that we're coming to invade the U.S., and analysts say that was absolutely a political stunt in order to try to reassure their voters, the base of his party, because most definitely the majority of that caravan still very far away from the border. Only just a group of about 350 migrants have arrived to Tijuana in the border with California, and they were trying to get into the border with the United States. Most definitely, what the president is trying to do is impress the crowds that migrants represent a threat, that they say that even they bring different illnesses like lepra, like tuberculosis, like smallpox, in order to try to create fear and to create an atmosphere of reluctance to see migrants. Most definitely, Jim Mattis is going to try to say that the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Defense, is supporting what is called customs and border protection. That is exactly the assignments that they have to do. We don't know yet, and the price of the operation is not known yet, but could go between $40 million and $110 million. We go back to you now.
Thank you. That was Jorge Gestoso from Washington. The Senate in Argentina is currently debating the proposed budget for 2019. The debate is expected to last until midnight, at which point the Senate will vote on whether to approve it or not. President Mauricio Macri needs this budget to be approved to maintain an agreement made with the International Monetary Fund. Many believe this budget will only further the government's austerity measures, hurting those most vulnerable. Meanwhile, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Buenos Aires to protest the proposed budget. Many gather outside Congress, banging on the fences that were set up to keep them out. Protesters believe this budget will not help with the country's economic crisis and demand that it be struck down. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
The debate continues in the Senate over the 2019 budget, which has caused a lot of turmoil among the people because of the ongoing recession and the adjustment measures it will bring. This budget is a direct response to the demands of the agreement between the government of Mauricio Macri and the International Monetary Fund. The debate is expected to last 12 hours. The government has guaranteed the necessary number of votes to approve the budget, a vote that will happen close to midnight. There is a lot of tension and high expectations. Protests are ongoing outside of the Senate in rejection of this bill, which will affect the most vulnerable sectors in Argentina.
Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires. We have more stories coming up, but meanwhile you can follow us. We're on Twitter at Telesur English and my account at Carla G. Telesur. We'll be back.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico el espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Mapuche community of Temucucuy was violently repressed by the Jungle Command, who opened fire against them by land and helicopters. This action provoked the death of the Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca. Let's look at a video from a witness.
And the police continues to fire. There are 2 helicopters flying over the area, and there are around 400 policemen in the community. The helicopters are flying over the buildings.
So let's learn more about these actions with our correspondent in Chile, Paola Dragnich, who has more.
Mapuche people gathered together with social organizations outside of Monell Palace in Santiago de Chile to protest condemning the murder of the Mapuche leader, Camilo Catrillanca Marin, of 24 years. Currently, the Tomo QQ rate continues. Some people have communicated through social networks that at least another youngster has been severely injured. This has still to be confirmed.
Former Chilean Bishop Juan Barros has declared for the second time before court for the alleged cover-up of sexual crimes against minors that a priest had committed. During a hearing of more than 3 hours at the prosecutor's office in Rancagua, Barros talked about his alleged cover-up of sexual abuse by chaplain Pedro Quiroz. Barros says he's willing to collaborate with justice to clarify the events. Before Pope Francis had accepted Barros' resignation back in June.
We must consider this is why it becomes relevant that he has identified as general of the army in retirement. He has the quality of public official, and as a public official, he has the obligation to denounce it opportunely.
Bolivian President Evo Morales has highlighted the work of the army in the defense of the people and the national sovereignty. During the 208th anniversary of the National Army, Morales talked about the importance of the Army's commitment for the country. Now the Army has become an essential tool in the fight against smuggling, according to Morales.
Nowadays, the armed forces have an important honor: the effective fight against smuggling. This is a problem that we face. Bolivia is the first economic growing in South America and second in the whole continent. That raises the price of all Bolivians. And we are convinced that working with the people and institutions, together we can improve the economic and social field of our dear Bolivia.
On Wednesday, torrential rains in the Peruvian region of Huánuco caused landslides that destroyed 80 homes. No deaths or injuries have been reported so far, but at least 30 families were left homeless. Residents are currently with no running water, and classes have been suspended for the time being.
Everything has been flooded. My animals have died. Everything was flooded.
Water and mud went into the homes, and since they are made out of adobe, they collapsed.
Colombian President Iván Duque has been in office for now 100 days. During this time, many have claimed he has not done enough for the country. Our correspondent in Bogotá, José Manuel Jiménez, has more.
100 days after President Iván Duque took office, experts believe he has not issued economic, political, or even legal proposals to help Colombia. Duque's reforms have been seriously questioned by both Congress and the people. Even the ruling party has criticized his reforms. During his time in office, there have been numerous protests by students, indigenous, and social organizations. 183 social leaders have been killed in 2018 alone, and during the last 100 days, there have been around 40 killings of social leaders with no government response. The peace process and the dialogues with ELN remain in standby, and the international community has continuously criticized the Colombian government for this. Iván Duque has also avoided talks with Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. The latest scandal to rock his presidency was the poisoning of Alejandro Pizano, who was a key witness in the Odebrecht bribery scandal. All in all, Duque's first 100 days in office have left many Colombians disappointed, as his government doesn't seem to be doing much to put an end to the many conflicts that plague the country.
That was José Manuel Jiménez from Colombia. We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. We'll be back after this video. Thank you for joining us again. The death toll in the California wildfires has risen to 51, and at least 100 people have disappeared. The town of Paradise has been destroyed almost completely, and its 15,000 residents had to be evacuated. Authorities say it will take years to be rebuilt. This has been California's deadliest fire on record. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his South Korean counterpart Moon Jae-in have discussed the peace process on the Korean peninsula. At the ASEAN summit, both leaders analyzed crucial issues such as denuclearization in the Korean peninsula and the development of binational cooperation. Moon Jae-in has expressed hope that further progress will be made during the upcoming meeting between North Korean and U.S. leaders.
We hope that the next two meetings between the US and North Korea leaders and Kim Jong-un's return visit to Seoul will further promote peace in the Korean peninsula.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has warned the United States that their decision to renew sanctions on Iran is a wrong path that will lead only to the suffering of everyday Iranians. In an address to his cabinet, Rouhani said the United States has shown clear contempt of international law and regulations in its quest to suppress other nations. The United States has reinstated all the sanctions that were previously lifted as part of the Iran nuclear deal.
And today, it is clear to everyone that these tyrannical, wrong sanctions by the US will result in the suffering of our dear noble nation. And if the people related to the US had the right verdict, that this power is a cruel power, today, this verdict is even more accurate, that the US certainly doesn't respect international laws and regulations.
Residents of Fiji have gone to the polls for the island nation's second elections since a military coup in 2006. Current Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, who led the coup, is expected to keep his position against a divided opposition in the country. Since 2006, Fiji has seen improvements in the economy, environmental policies, and minority rights. But human rights organizations say there are still many restrictions, as well as an ongoing issue of police brutality. The United Nations has lifted sanctions on Eritrea after a reported improvement in the country's relations with its neighbors. The Security Council unanimously adopted a British-drafted resolution lifting the arms embargo as well as all travel bans, asset freezes, and targeted sanctions against the country. The Council slapped sanctions on Eritrea in 2009 for its alleged support of al-Shabaab insurgents in Somalia, a claim that Eritrea has long denied. Activists in Burkina Faso are urging for better conditions in women's prisons for mothers and their children. Most of the convicted mothers have no choice but to take their children with them. This despite severe hygiene issues and a lack of resources to care for them. They want authorities to provide services and welfare for their children.
They don't have baby medicine here as she's not officially a prisoner. The living conditions are not good, so it's not easy.
In detention and correctional centers here, almost everything is treated with paracetamol, but babies need liquid medicine that swallow. That's something we need to take into account. The current provision, it doesn't exist.
The British cabinet has supported a draft Brexit deal that was agreed with the European Union. According to the Prime Minister Theresa May, after a 5-hour cabinet meeting, they reached a collective decision to accept this agreement.
But the collective decision of Cabinet was that the government should agree the draft withdrawal agreement and the outline political declaration. This is a decisive step which enables us to move on and finalise the deal in the days ahead.
Archaeologists in Bolivia have discovered several 500-year-old tombs that belong to an indigenous civilization. The underground chamber was found 30 kilometers from La Paz. It has over 100 artifacts and human remains that may have belonged to the Pacajes people. The indigenous Aymara kingdom of Pacajes flourished in the Bolivian highlands until it was conquered by the Inca Empire in the mid-15th century. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but as you know, this and many other stories, we have them on our website at telesurenglish.net. Here you can find all our latest information, our opinion articles, and videos as well. And you can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Continue watching Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until next time.